Okie dokie. All right. I hate my laptop. My laptop is literally this big. It's so hard. Like I'm trying to have StreamYard open in it, but I can't see all of the options. It like stays really small. Hi, can you hear me? Also, I have like the air conditioning blasting right now. So, yeah. Is it super loud? The AC is loud? God damn it. All right, fine. I'll sweat it out for you guys. Hold on, let me turn it off real quick. Oh wait, you didn't hear it? You didn't hear the AC? Oh, well then maybe I'll crank that shit back up. Well, I guess it's actually not that bad right now. I fucked up the whole setup, but I just sent a link to John, so hopefully that works. I fucking suck at this. Marino, how's my hair? My hair's been a disaster. It's a fucking tornado out right now, not to self-dox myself, but I went out to the store and it fucked up my fucking hair. Oh, who's that? Oh shit, I didn't realize you still had a channel on YouTube. I don't want to blow up your spot, but hell yeah. I told all my simps to come simp it the fuck out. Okay, sweet. This is my fault because I said 8 and then like 15 minutes later I was like, here's a link. Hopefully it works. This is only like the third time I've used like StreamYard. Anyway. I know. Well, I'll say I'm in the United States and I am somewhere where a tropical storm just hit. And yes. I was so fucking afraid because my house is like already dilapidated. I have my own little Discord that's kind of bopping. But I'm trying not to get sucked into those things as much. Hmm. It's true. I am a loner. One of my friends was like, "Hey, we should socialize," and he gave me a small miniature panic attack. But what's up with you guys? How's fucking Twitch? Twitch, is that what you're doing now? I've thought of making a Twitch account, but I have like the worst setup at all. Hi, Stuart. Thank you. I'm having a good time debating myself. I forgot how to use StreamYard, so I don't even know if I'm doing it right. Also, this is my $5 microphone that breaks on me like half the time. Oh no. You guys see what's going on modern day debate tomorrow? This shirt, it's this band called Flower. They're like an anarcho punk band I played with like years ago. Not to continually self-dox myself, but good luck Googling a band that's named Flower. uh, hmm. What am I doing wrong? Hold on. I'm gonna hatred. But thanks. Did you guys like? I won the debate. And the artist formerly known as Based Femoid. Yeah. Well, what do you guys think? I didn't do any preparation for this whatsoever. So what do you guys think about the simp issue? What's up, Verde? I was thinking about it because I was like, so there's varying degrees to the simp issue, and a lot of it, so much of it, it's like there's like the molecule of validity, you know, there's like this much validity of like the idea like, oh, don't be nice to a woman just to like get something back from her. But then everything surrounding it just seems so fucking toxic and bizarre. Also, there's nothing wrong with paying for content, paying someone to give you attention. That's what everyone fucking does on the internet. The internet is literally just people paying to get attention or making money by giving attention. It's the attention economy. What do you guys think? Pro or anti? Dude, Ristel, I had to like, I actually personally reached out to him to invite him back into the Discord because I felt like we finally had a voice chat and I was like, wow, I feel like he's really funny. I like him. I'm in love, you could say. But then he left. He thought he overexposed himself. Hold on, I'm trying to get my brother's cat out of here. I don't know, that fucked something up. So confused. All right, hold on. Let me get this cat out of here. All right, kitty. Okay, kitty cat. Go. Kitty. Go on. Out, out, out. Kitty. Look, it's outside. Look, go. Look at the string. Here, kitty. Oh my god. That's my brother's kitten. It's like this cat specifically goes out of its way to like fuck with me big time. Was it like debating creepers? That seems like a lifetime ago. My first OnlyFans debate. I actually had to remove Twitter from like my apps on my phone because I kept getting sucked into like Brittany Venti would like post something stupid, and then next thing I know, I'm in like a 3-hour just pointless, completely pointless argument. It should be just starting. I fucked up and didn't send him the link until like 5 minutes ago, so hopefully he sees it. If not, maybe I'll get one of you guys to debate me, even though I'm sure you guys are all you're all pro simp here, right? Because you guys are my simps. Simps are worse than thoughts. Change my mind. I reject the framing. Oh, okay. No rush, John. I fucked up setting this whole thing up. I've only been on for 5 minutes. Good for you, no privacy. Twitter is fucked up. And I knew it was fucked up. That's why I put off signing up for it up until like in April is when I made my account. It just sucks me in. Like, I can't even tell you how many times I start an argument, like start typing out like, you are very wrong. You're so wrong. This is why you're wrong. And then I stop myself because I'm like, I can't correct everyone. Oh, wait, Jen's here. Hold on. Hey. Hi.
Can you hear me?
How's it going?
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I can hear you
okay.
loud and clear. Hold on.
Okay.
Sorry, I fucked everything up.
No, you're all
but you
good.
can hear.
It's fine.
Oh, okay. Do we sound like hey chat, do we sound like we're at like equal levels of volume? Because that's something I notice sometimes. I'll like watch a debate back and like one person's so quiet, you know, and I'm like, why did no one say anything? That sucks.
Yeah. Let us know if the volume's all right. Mine might be a bit too loud.
Yours, I mean, it sounds like nice and clear. I just have this on. My speakers are loud. All right.
There we go.
So, anyway, yo, what is up? Welcome to the Simp debate. Finally, I've been dreaming. You were like an angel. You messaged me saying you were willing to take the anti-simp stance, and you seem like a reasonable person. So I was like, well, how could I? You know, well, you seem like a reasonable person. Let's see.
I'm a good actor. That's it.
Yeah. All right.
Do we just want to go into it? Yeah.
I'm curious to hear your reasoning.
I'm not that well acquainted with the whole simp phenomenon. I mean, I've only seen it kind of from a distance, so I have no like direct interaction with actual simps or anything like that. From what I understand, though, the simps are the people that follow along, mostly female streamers, and donate quite a bit of money to them in the hopes of getting their attention, something like that, in order to sort of get the attention, get that sort of dopamine release, and get a some sort of like relational connection between themselves and the streamer or the sex worker online, whatever type of simp they might be. And so the reason I have a bit of an issue with that is because I see that when the person is having that sort of interactional relationship, that is drawing this sort of connection within their own mind, maybe even subconsciously, that there's some sort of potential where they can enter into a real life relationship with this other person and be able to have a real sort of connection between them. And I don't think that's ever likely to be the case. Like, I think most of the times, any sort of like transactions between simps and queens are just going to be purely platonic and nothing ever more than that. I mean, there could be the off chance that like 1 in 1,000, the simp will finally get his girl. It could.
I mean, if you've seen the documentary Pretty Woman, that, you know.
Oh, yeah.
that worked out for her. But...
True. Of course, I think there's kind of a difference, though, between somebody who's a simp for an actual prostitute that they're interacting with versus, which I think probably happens more often than not, versus having this sort of like digital barrier between the two people.
So do you think there's like something vastly different going on when like a guy goes in to like a female streamer's room and, you know, they fancy her, they think she's like cute, so that's why they're doing that? Is that really vastly different than like what happens with male streamers? Because that's kind of built on the same kind of parasocial relationship, to the point where a lot of male streamers I see go out of their way to be like, hey, just, you know, this is entirely one-sided, like, you know, you're like my buds, but not really, you know, so don't like give me money thinking I will like be your friend after. But it's more, I don't think there's anything intrinsically wrong with like paying for like attention, you know. I was thinking about this because I was trying to think of other like careers to kind of compare it to, where you're like buying attention. And you know, I was thinking about like my therapist, you know, like technically I'm paying her to pay attention to me and listen to all of my problems, but it's a mutual, as long as there's still like a mutual consent and understanding of how, you know, what the relationship is. I don't see it like as intrinsically harmful. But I will say simps exist, you know, like simps in like the most, well, maybe we should like, define. So simp, I was like Googling this too, like right before we signed on. I didn't really do any real preparation, but I Googled simp just to make sure. Okay, good. I Googled simp, and it stands for stop idolizing, or stop something mediocre pussy. Originates from simpleton, I guess.
Yeah, suckers idolizing mediocre
like
pussy.
Someone who's, but I see it used a lot as like someone being like, you treat women too well. Like, it seems like a lot of the like people using the word simp, they're kind of using it to be like, you're treating those bitches too good. We got to take them down a notch, you know? It's used in like so many different contexts. So it's...
Mm-hmm. It could be partially that, like, if some people see that, oh, there's certain women that are like exploiting their audience or something like that, those are the types of women that you shouldn't be actually supporting and encouraging. That might be a way to sort of make that case. Or it could be the other way, where the person that's actually doing the donation actually harming themselves by not providing for themselves well enough. And I think that by like investing this resource into people, that there's not going to be as much of a mutualistic sort of a benefit that's going on there. I think that is a poor use of your own money. Mm-hmm. And I feel the same sort of way about people who gamble. Like, I think that's like, sure, you can gamble for fun, but if for the people that like go to the gas station and they always pick up some like lotto number every time they go to get gas, that to me seems... Can you hear me?
It did start lagging a bit. I could I could like hear what you're saying, but I don't know if it's your internet or something. If it's like it got like a little digital.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's okay. I don't know if it could be my computer too.
It might. Is it better now? I've turned off the webcam.
I think so. Yeah. I think I can hear somewhat. A little better. But I think I kind of got the gist of what you're saying. So you think of it as like it's like on par with like gambling or something, where it's not like this like hideously immoral thing to do, but it's not, it's right. Like inherently there's like a level of exploitation, and it like preys upon like some, natural instinct, and kind of uses that for profit. Is that kind of your
yeah, definitely something like that.
Yeah. So do you think it's possible, like when we talk about like e-girls or cam girls, or even like a lot of female gamers just get kind of like lumped into that. Do you think it's possible for them to like accept donations without it having that kind of like dynamic, or is that like, does it like necessitate that dynamic, do you think?
I was thinking about that, and actually I had this sort of interesting idea. I don't know how much it would really harm the female streamers though, in regards to their revenue income. But if like donations suddenly lost, if donations were anonymous all of a sudden, that way there would be no real connection between the person that's doing the donation and the person that's receiving it, so that there is sort of this idealized idea within the simp that, oh, there's going to be some sort of connection here. And there could still be like ways in which to like, oh, by the way, this is X so-and-so. If like for some reason your identity needed to be necessary. That would be at least one idea I had, that a way in which somebody could still have their stream donations take place without having to have that sort of exploitation taking place.
Yeah, no, that's interesting to think, because it is a lot of the appeal is like getting that attention. Like I've donated to streamers before, and when you see someone you look up to just say your name, you get like a little like, like, oh my God, like, it's something. It's something that people like, and I think that's, but I feel like that's more of like a broader trend, and it's more like, okay, we like look up and idolize certain people that maybe aren't like necessarily qualified or like deserving of the, but is there like a real harm being done if like I tip a streamer and kind of get like little rush that they like said my name, So that's, and
that's a good point. Like there's ways in which being nice to or like tipping a streamer isn't technically simping. I think there's probably a spectrum here where you can have, I guess what Neekolul says, wholesome simping, and then your toxic sort of simping that kind of goes on. And I think there definitely is a case that like you can see certain examples of toxic simping taking place. And like you said, just when you're watching a streamer and you enjoy their content and you want to sort of get that little bit of attention from the streamer, that you can just say something and they'll like say your name and you'll get that little bit of joy from it. that I don't really see much of a problem with that. I think it really is just, this is why I'm actually less concerned with calling out, say, like female Twitch streamers or e-thoughts or anything like that, and more so wanting to stigmatize the actual simps themselves. Like if you see somebody that is doing actions that you think is harmful for themselves, and that like they're donating a great amount of money that they can't afford to give out, or if they have this idealized picture of themselves in Pokimane, like coming together and becoming like boyfriend and girlfriend, then this is obviously somebody that's like participating in some sort of like delusional behaviors. And that's where I think that, okay, you got to call that out. Dude, you're not going to be Pokimane's boyfriend. Dude, do not donate that $500. This is just idiotic simp behavior. And I think that's why there sort of needs to be, like right now, probably the word simp has kind of taken on too much of a meme level, and so the word has lost its edge. That's why I think it should be used sparingly, but used where it should be used. Like if you're just donating money to like $5 to a Twitch streamer or something like that, I don't think that's really simp behavior. I think the simp behavior that let's see, the definition that I was sort of working off of is someone seeking after attention from e-girls well outside their league. So like if you're donating with the sort of desire to sort of like perhaps enter into a relationship with that other person in a sort of real way, and that's why you're donating to them, then I think that would be sort of a toxic simpery in a sort of sense that should be called out.
Yeah, well, I would agree. That was like, I agree with you on that. Like that kind of behavior is definitely toxic, you know, not only for the men themselves, but it's toxic for the models. I have friends who have to be very, very clear with like their clients. Like, these are the boundaries. I do not love you. Like, we are not dating. Because when, if someone's delusional enough to like latch on to that idea, it can actually become dangerous for them. And they'll have people who, once they, you know, the illusion is shattered, then they become like obsessive and harass them. And so it's like, so I see like the molecule, or like, you know, not even a molecule, like, you know, a decent like chunk of truth to the being like anti-simp in like that very specific regard. But I feel like it's become, well, I think it's overblown for sure. Like, and the word has been used really, it's become like inextricably linked with like misogyny from my perspective as an SJW. Just saying, it kind of seems like it did. So I, like, for example, the first time I heard it was the first time I ever went on like a political stream of any kind, and this was in like February. And the host, you know, it's like on the right wing, and the audience was pretty far right, you know, had that kind of vibe going. And like he just interacted with me like you are now, like, you know, like, oh, it's two humans interacting, like, and the chat the whole time was simp, 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 simp. Every time, I swear to God. So this word has followed me everywhere. So this is the impression I'm getting. And then the people who they don't call simp, like I was on one show and the hosts were being nice to me, and then someone called in, they said hello to all the guys there, and then they were like, good evening, whore. And then all the chat was like, yeah. So it's kind of like, oh, so that's what it means to like be a not simp, is you have to literally just treat women like shit. But I know that's not what you're defending at all. I'm just saying it's like, I feel like it's blown up into this really toxic thing that like overshadows many of the like potentially valid critiques of simptitude or whatever. That's what I'm calling it. I don't know.
No, that's good. I guess I'm not quite seeing the connection. Like maybe there's a correlational aspect where a lot of people that are calling out simp behavior are more often maybe more misogynistic or something like that. But the term itself, I think, can be sort of disentangled from that, given that it's always used towards like the men that are behaving simply. So I don't really see how that would, I don't know, maybe it seems weird to say it's inextricably misogynistic if it's a term that's only able to be used against other men.
Well, I guess, well, because the way that it's generally used is like, it's like you are treating a woman too well, better than she deserves, or like there's all these memes about, oh, like when she tells you he's just a friend, like basically the funny thing being like, haha, you let your girlfriend have male friends, sucker, simp. Like, so it's kind of used as this term of like, or like directed at like a male feminist or something, someone who's viewed as like bending over backwards or being overly submissive to women. So it like that's how I feel like it's like linked, maybe not inextricably linked, but it's like there's a link with it that to me at least has seemed inextricable because I haven't. You're the first person who has used the term non-ironically who's been even remotely reasonable. So that's why. So I I'm willing to look more into it because it's something where I have just seen like this one side. I spent a lot of time talking to people on the far right, so that's the corner of the internet where I'm hearing this from, like these critiques mostly. So yeah.
And that's true that there is a lot of vagueness. Like I think that most people using the term simp aren't using it very knowingly well. Like they just see some behavior that they see as sort of beta and they respond, oh, that guy's a simp, even though it could be like it's not, and it's a misapplication of the term. Like there's a lot of people calling iDubbz a simp or even a cuck, and it doesn't really seem to work quite right given like his situation. But I think there are other definitely situations that you find online where the term simp would be a very useful application to describe them, the people doing that behavior.
Do you think like, so for like someone like Pokimane or the other one, these are like Neekolul. The two like they're the ones who like also kind of brought this into the mainstream consciousness a lot. Like what percentage of their audience do you think is like simps? Just curious. Like would you think it's like a majority or like is it like a minority?
Of Pokimane's audience are tier 3 subs. Let's see.
So that's I mean that's,
I don't really know.
One way to assess.
that would just be like my sort of back of the hand understanding of like just guessing. I don't really follow Pokimane and I'm not that under.
Me neither.
I didn't even know that there are like different tiers of Twitch. Like that's how rarely I use it. Okay, so what is a tier 3? Tier 3 is $25 a month. That's kind of a lot, yeah. Definitely more than just a natural kind of tipping of your friendly neighborhood streamer.
True. Does it say if it has any like specific perks or? Because that tends to be when people like sign up for like those higher levels, like say on like Patreon, like, you know, there's YouTubers have Patreons where there's like the different levels. And say if you're like this tier, you get like a group hangout like once a month or something. So I wouldn't, you know.
I'm looking at Pokimane's Twitch page for subs, and the only like upgrades that it comes with is one exclusive emote, and a tier 3 badge flare next to your name, and then 2 additional emote modifiers. So like you can have sunglasses on the emotes or
okay.
Like it doesn't seem like very much actually. Maybe there's also probably like Patreon that you could probably use to identify simps there, I guess.
So if you had to guess based on, do you think it's like 10% simps or?
I don't know. Really, it probably has to be done on a case-by-case basis where you see somebody exhibiting some sort of simp behavior and then calling them out for it. I don't know if you can make it sort of a wide swathing proclamation of just all of Pokimane's followers are simps.
I mean, people do. That's, you know, I mean, I'm like I said, I like spend a lot of time around extremely unreasonable people. So I hear these broad declarations and this general sentiment. Like I've been doing a lot of debates like around like OnlyFans and stuff like that because there's a ridiculous amount of like animosity towards like OnlyFans models and stuff right now, which to me is just bizarre. And I feel like that is kind of like linked with the simps because they view anyone who like pays for that kind of service as being like a simp. So you think like well, I'm glad you didn't think iDubbz was a simp because that was one of the other things that piqued my interest because I was like, what is it about this situation with this one YouTuber that has triggered millions of people that blows my mind because he's okay with his girlfriend doing something. So that's what I've been interested in. I'm like, what is this like phenomena? Like, where is it? I don't know. It's so hard for me to wrap my head around.
Yeah, I know there's a big. I think for a lot of his audience, there felt like there was some sort of betrayal, but they couldn't really verbalize it very well because, like, I'm not even sure like whether the term "cuck" would apply to iDubbz either. But I think it's probably just this general idea that like, oh, there's all these edgy YouTube comedians, and then they sort of foster this audience that are sort of irony bros that are like, oh, you're a slut or something like that, and then that sort of audience type of humor is built up, and then from there, like he does something completely out of character for a lot of his audience, and then they're like, "What the heck? I thought you were on our team," or something like that. I do want to say I watched your debate with S.J. Thomason on OnlyFans, and you brought up a really good point that I wanted to compliment. That compared to like a website like Pornhub, OnlyFans is probably a much better option for female sex workers or anything like that, simply because it has a better feature for keeping out people that are younger in age. Like in order to actually have be able to access OnlyFans content, you have to like put in your credit card or stuff like that. And if you're like a kid that's like 8 or 12 years old or something like that, that's content, that's pornographic content that you're not going to be able to get access to. Whereas like just going online and searching up Pornhub and just saying, yes, I'm 18. That's like all it takes for some little kid to like see hardcore anal sex or something like that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, see, this is the reason why I've been like drawn to debating OnlyFans specifically. Is it hurts my brain because of all the porn sites, there's really just so many benefits to it when you compare it to like a site like Pornhub that literally has like human trafficking victims on it, is accessible to children. Like,
yeah,
there's so many ways that OnlyFans is like a more secure site. They have much more secure regulations. There is like a paywall so that, yeah, it's not just open for anyone to see. The models have more control. They have passive income. So that's why it kind of does seem, yeah, when people like are very much like attacking like OnlyFans, it seems less about the like gender dynamic, or it just seems like kind of like, oh, look at these women having too much power. Like now they're like, every woman's gonna be an OnlyFans model because, you know, that's what they think every woman wants to do, apparently.
Yeah.
Like,
there is the sort of concern that I had that I don't even know if I have any sort of like response to it, is the fact that like for women that see that having an OnlyFans account is a legitimate way to like earn an income and it's very easy and accessible to them, will that sort of influence more young women to becoming like internet sex workers rather than earning a more, I guess, dignified source of income? Like, and I'm not just trying to like shame sex workers. Just I think that's something that you have to kind of take into consideration for your future. Like if you're wanting to be a mom someday and, oh, you have nudes of yourself online, and that's going to be sort of hard to get past for a lot of people. And it can be like something shameful for some people after they've kind of grown out of that phase and they might regret it. I don't know. And so I'm just wanting to make, that's the thing. I'm not sure what the correct like solution would be, but I'm just concerned that young women might enter into OnlyFans and start producing content and earning a living and thinking, oh, this is perfect for me. And then later in their future end up regretting it. And now it's online and it's not something that they can really go back on.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, well, the only thing I take issue with what you said is dignified, because I see it as, I mean, I view it as dignified and respectable as being any type of influencer or content creator. To me, it's there's a lot of ways that it's very like, I mean, to me, it's like there's no huge differentiation except for the like sexual aspect to it, but it has all the same risks of like you're putting out this stuff permanently. That's going to be following the internet. That's something we as a society need to figure out how to cope with in general, is the permanence of the internet, and people growing up on the internet and making mistakes. ideally, like for me, I would hope that in 20 years, it's not going to be a big deal if there's like naked videos of you online. Like already you're seeing that become less of a big deal now that everyone's getting hacked, and it's become more normal, which I guess you could say people take issue with what it means to like normalize these kinds of jobs. And it's interesting to say because it's like, yeah, I just kind of view it as the same as like normalizing being like an influencer. Like, is it a great career path that I would be like, daughter, you should be an influencer. Like, that's what you should like really put your mind into, is
Right.
this fleeting thing that probably won't work out for you and will probably only last like a few years if it does, or you'll make a ton of money and then like all of a sudden not be making any. Like, there's just so many. I just feel like, yeah, it's like, I don't know. Do you see it as different from like being an influencer in general? Is it less like sex aspect?
I don't know. I hadn't really thought of it. It was funny when you had mentioned you see it as kind of on the same level as an influencer. I chuckled involuntarily because like I don't really find influencers that much of a dignified sort of position to have either.
Yeah.
I mean, they're entertainers, and so they're like relieved stressed and to watch, and they're entertaining, they're funny, or they're interesting, or things like that. But I don't really see that as sort of a model citizen for society to sort of like look up to and to work towards. But I don't know. Is there sort of a? I guess so. There is kind of a difference because for being somebody that like maybe makes YouTube videos or something like that, sure, you might look back on your videos that you made like 5 years ago and think like, oh man, that's so cringy, that's so out of date and out of touch, and like I was really stupid in doing that. And you might regret it to a certain extent, but I don't know if that would be the same sort of level of like, oh man, I had this video of me shoving things up my vagina or something like that, and now this is something that I'll have to live with for kind of the rest of my life. I don't know if it's really the same level exactly.
I feel like it's less like, I would be less worried about like a naked video of me popping up than like, say, if I'm like Shane Dawson and there's a video of me doing blackface or something. I think I would be much more concerned about one, because one I view is like, it's like a moral transgression. It's not a great look, I don't, even though I think he deserves to, be forgiven and we could move past that. Honestly,
did he actually do blackface?
Many, many, many times. Oh. It's actually,
I didn't know that.
His digital footprint is actually absurdly bad, but I feel bad for him because he's been on the internet for a decade, and guess what? He got famous making that content because people loved it. They encouraged it. He became a famous YouTube star doing offensive comment that was, or offensive content that was more socially acceptable 10 years ago for whatever reason. And now 10 years later, it's like you can stack up all these videos that really make him look bad. It's him making bestiality jokes, pedophile jokes, tons of blackface, like stuff that you would just never do today unless you're like a very wacky person. But I see that as more troubling. Like the permanence of the internet in general is like pretty troubling, but I feel like we're moving away from like the stigma around sex like in general. So that's why I feel like hopefully in 20 years it just won't be as big a deal, or if it is still like kind of viewed as like taboo, we'll have like a better mechanism in society for dealing with like past internet mistakes, because we're all just kind of like the test subjects. So. I know we must, if civilization still exists in 20 years, we're just very like, I don't know, like we must find some way of coping with the permanence of the internet, But
I certainly agree with that. I think there should be some sort of like statute of limitations regarding like what actions you did in the past are cancel worthy or not. And that would be the case for like, oh, I was 18 and I did this video that I'm not proud of or something like that, that you can sort of like, and it's been, I don't know, 15, 20 years or something like that. It's just not really something to be worried about. I mean, it's still the case that people are using it in order to like cancel these big celebrities or things like that. But I think that in order to sort of, I don't know, go up against that, there just has to be a large enough amount of people that aren't willing or aren't going to accept being canceled. And so like, I think there's probably a greater responsibility now for the audience. So like, say somebody's trying to cancel Shane Dawson or something like that, and they're like doing some sort of letter writing campaign towards advertisers or something like that to try to get them off. I think probably there's now a responsibility for the actual fans of Shane Dawson or the people that support him to do some sort of counter letter writing campaign towards those same advertisers to say like, no, this is something that was done 10 years ago, back when people were supposed to be edgy just to try to make people laugh. And it's not something that we care about. We actually care about you as a sponsor or something like that. And so we're not going to, this is a guy that doesn't need to be canceled or something like that. I think right now, all of the morality is sort of being guided by whoever is willing to speak the loudest, like the squeaky wheel gets the grease sort of thing. And that's the thing. Absolutely. A lot of people are just allowing the vocal minority to sort of shift whatever popular morality of the time to be.
Yeah. I'm working on a video about it now because I'm just so fascinated by how poorly humans are adapting to the internet in general, and how it like a lot of problems that we're facing. Like, I think the internet could really be the thing that expedites us towards like the complete collapse of civilization as we know it, because we're seeing that already with like coronavirus. This is like our test run for like a pandemic, and there's so much misinformation on the internet that people think it's literally a conspiracy. And they're rejecting just the most basic medical advice is now like a partisan political thing. It's like, all right, well, the left's saying put on a mask, so the right's like, I guess we're anti-mask. Like, and that's all.
It's definitely concerning that like a lot of the things that are advocated for are just merely done based upon like, oh, the people that I'm not supposed to like are advocating for the opposite, so I'm going to advocate for that opposite or something like that. It's just like ultimately like self-eating tail that's just going to destroy itself eventually. I think it's better to not pick a side as best as you can, but that's the thing. Like a lot of these identities are sort of like corely built into people. Because it's just easier for a lot of people to just see what other people are doing and then just keep on doing what they're doing just because they like them or something like that. I think, like what you were saying about how like we need to sort of, or that we're not like adapted for the internet. It's definitely a great concern. And I think it's probably also something that it'd be interesting to look into, like what are the sorts of effects of, say, like online pornography to young men or young women that are kind of like their brain is still developing and they're like learning these things like, oh, this is what sex is. And that's how they're sort of thinking about things and like having these like ideas of like, this is what the ideal woman should look like, and this is what I'm sort of like attracted to now. And how is that sort of affecting their longer term relationships that they hopefully will be building absent the pornography. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, I guess.
Well, it'd be nice if there was more like data on the subject, because the thing that's unfortunate is pretty much all the data surrounding like online pornography specifically is looking at pornography addiction. So it's like a lot of times when I'm having these conversations, people just conflate it. When it's like talking about alcohol versus alcoholism, it's like, you know, like obviously if you're someone who has an addictive like predisposition, then you can you'll get addicted to anything that releases dopamine, you know, and porn is something that does that. I'm addicted to YouTube, addicted to Twitter, all of these things, they have the same mechanism, you know, if you're like someone who gets addicted. And I think also like with so far as like kids learning from online porn, that also has to do with, I think, well, first off, I think online porn is here to stay. There's nothing we can do. I really don't think that there's any way to hack the internet in such a way that kids aren't going to be able to find like porn. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I can't fathom. So I think maybe the emphasis should be more into like more comprehensive like sex education to kind of be like, you know, that, and just general like media literacy, you know, to teach kids how to like process all the things they're being exposed to on the internet, because, you know, they're also being exposed to like extremely violent videos. Like sometimes I'll like be like, I want to look up what a dead body looks like after an airplane crash, and I'll just like look that up for no reason. Then I'm like, I don't like, why am I doing this? But it's out there, you know? So yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say with how like online porn affects like developing minds, because I think the internet in general is going to have like an effect on developing minds. Like I can't even imagine what it's like to be like, you know, like I'm a millennial, so I had the first formative years of my life without the internet. So I can imagine what it's like being like, you know, like one and having like an iPad. Like
I know.
I don't know.
It scares me sometimes because I'll like see like friends and they have their kid that's like 4 or 5 years old and they're using an iPad and they're like on it all the time. And it's like, what are you doing to your kid here? It's like really kind of scary to think about like, okay, what is like, I mean, all there's so many people that are like being given medications for antidepressants and also ADHD. And like, is this some sort of like new result based upon like just the fact that the internet is a place that you can seek out novelty anywhere. And so just like, oh, you quickly become bored of just anything. And like, there's this, the mere fact that like people can't just sort of sit and be peaceful for like an hour a day is something that it's really startling, because this is something like that would be completely normal to our ancestors just 50, 100 years ago. And now like we can't do it. So to me, that seems to be an indicator that there's something going wrong here that should try to be corrected. And like you said, like the internet is kind of all encompassing. You can't just scrub it free of all pornography. So I think there probably is more of a concern to put the agency into the individuals to make sure that they're strong enough to not become addicted to pornography, if that can even be avoided. Yeah. I'm sure there probably are ways in which that sort of thing can be helped, like people that are stuck watching porn like every night or multiple times a day and they don't want to. If there's ways in which they can respond, that they can take actions to actually help them so that they're not sort of ingrained in this toxic self-enabling cycle that they're in.
Yeah. No, I definitely, the way I see it is it's like, it's another thing we're adapting poorly to. I've been reading this book. It's The Decadent Society, and it's kind of talking about how we're just like in this stagnated place and victims of like our own success in a way, where it's like we have, you know, automation took a lot of activity away from us. So our bodies are now becoming more stagnant. Our jobs are more like specialized. So we're just doing the same task over and over. And it's exhausting and not fulfilling. So when we go home, we literally want to turn our brain off. Like, and that's just how, you know, we cope. And then we use the internet. And I don't know. I started trying to meditate recently, and it's difficult. Like I could, like I've had health issues. So I've been in bed a lot, like more than your average, you know, functioning person. But I'll literally just stare at like into my phone like all day. And part of me is like, you know, there's never been a better time to be like depressed and sickly, really, because I can do whatever I want on the internet. But it also is not. Yeah, it's definitely not. It's not good.
How upset are you going to be if TikTok is actually banned?
I was so. Oh my God, I'd be so bummed. I literally just got into TikTok, and I'm 30. I turned 30 recently, and I had a midlife crisis and was like, start a YouTube channel, and I'm gonna go on TikTok. And and you know what? We're in quarantine, so I'm just kind of like, TikTok. It's even worse because like on YouTube, if you thought YouTube like lowered your attention span, then you go to TikTok where it's just like 2 seconds, like 2 seconds, like you're just flipping through it.
It's like going from crack into heroin, and now like your attention span is like 5 seconds at most. Like you'll get halfway through a TikTok and you're like, well, this is going nowhere. Swipe up and like keep on going. It's just like, and then you'll just lay there for like hours, and it's like crazy. It's not.
It's another one of the ways that we're just literally, we are not adapting well. Like we need some major like massive overhaul on the way that society is organized and the way that communities function, because it's, you know, it's like with the thing with like increasing mental illness, like I'm someone who's been like diagnosed with mental illness and like takes psych meds, but there's always this part of me that's like, am I really like, I don't know, am I just how a human would normally react to society that's completely like disconnected and unfulfilling with no purpose and like no, like, I don't know. It's
yeah. There's some psychological research that kind of says that in order for a person to be like feel meaningful, like having lived a meaningful life or a real satisfied life, there has to be some amount of exertion of effort in their goals. Like they have some sort of goals or expectation, and through like putting that into effect and actually having to work for it, that's what then makes it sort of more meaningful and satisfying for the person going through that. And I think for a lot of these types of things, like with the use of technology and the internet, everything just comes by so instantly that like there's no middle step there of like having to work for something in order to actually get it. That just I think kind of leaves you kind of hollow and like depressed. And there's so many young people nowadays that are just utterly depressed. It's really a shock and something that we as sort of the younger generation will have to sort of respond to, because like nobody older than us has any idea of like what the problems are or like how even to fix it. They're just like boomers that are I don't know, idiots. Nothing they can really be doing about it.
Yeah, it's really hard to even like comprehend. Like, are you religious or because that's another one of the big things. It's like I'm an atheist, but I also like I feel like the loss of religion is another thing where it has like been just like one more element of like a perfect storm of like things that are making people miserable. It's like right when we need like some little semblance of like purpose. It's
it's like everything's sort of crashing down. I was raised in a like pretty fundamentalist household, and then started to I don't know, just have a knack for self-education, and learned a lot of stuff that just doesn't seem to work well with the fundamentalist religious vision. And so from there, I've been trying to sort of establish a middle ground, or something more like an agnostic kind of religious position. Like I still believe in a God. There's maybe some like caveats there that like I'm not so sure how much you can say about the God, or but I do definitely think that a religion is sort of a very like a necessary component to human psychology. Like we are social creatures that are meant to have some sort of like community that we interact with, that are there to sort of hold us accountable for things that we know are the best for us. But if we were to try to do it under our own self agency, that's a pretty limited way in actually going about it. And so like by having sort of social accountability from your friends and family and this like tightly knit community, which religions are entirely based around, is trying to build that tightly knit community with a set of values, set of practices, all these things that are used to try to make people more like each other and more working towards their goals. That is absolutely necessary, I think, for human well-being. And I think the problem is that for a lot of young people in the West, the sort of boomer understanding of religions as like this fundamentalist vision is just not adequate to actually respond to a lot of the inculcation of science and atheism that has kind of left our society in its wake. And I think there needs to be some sort of like newer avenue that's taken place by the religious leaders and by the young people like myself and things like that, in order to sort of make this open space for the atheistic but still religious or something like that, so that there is a way that people can enter into these religions without having to like, because I think for a lot of people, belief in God is just sort of a dead option to them. So William James, he has this understanding of live options, that's something that you could do, and dead options of things that you can't do. And so there's sort of this expectation within a lot of religions that you have to believe in God, believe he did all these things historically, that I think for a lot of people, we've just grown up into sort of this materialistic secular age that these types of beliefs aren't really live options to us anymore. And so if that is sort of the threshold of like, okay, you're not allowed to be in our religion because you can't hold to these beliefs. Well, then that's just kind of cutting off this sort of psychological necessity for people that they would normally have been able to get in the past. But as of right now, they're just kind of stuck dead in the water and to live a sort of life without community and meaning. And that's why I think there's a lot of depressed young people nowadays, because there is such a lack of friendship and meaning between people. We're very much like this idea or individualized sort of atomic sort of system where like the only person that matters is me, myself, and I. And then like other people can matter as well insofar as they like help me in some ways. And I think that that's just such a wrong. It's such a I don't know, imbalanced way of approaching things. And I think it's just something that's not adequate for living a life. Life.
Are you into the whole, like, what is it? Is it metaphysical truth or like metaphorical truth, where it's like, because I've been thinking about that, like with like in regards to religion, of like, it's not like literally true, but it's like it's like something meta true, and that it like enhances our like fitness, like from an evolutionary standpoint. That's been like interesting to me, where I was like, you know, that actually kind of makes sense, because I mean, there is a reason why you know, humans organize themselves in such a way, and at this point we have evolved and our brains have gotten so complex that it does work against us. So it's not, I think it would be good to like take the better elements of religion and create like just some other type of cultural tradition, or you know, something more like akin to, like, I don't know, like Buddhism or something, where it has like a more secular aspect to it, but also like the traditions and, you know, some belief system.
Right. It's funny you mentioned that, because like the first video I put out on my YouTube channel is what is metaphorical truth, and I sort of go at these like 4 different perspectives on it: Brett Weinstein's perspective, Jordan Peterson's perspective, and Jonathan Pageau's perspective. And they're all sort of like differing understandings of what metaphorical truth is. And I guess sort of the amalgamation definition I sort of had is something that a maxim that is more often true than not true, or something like that. So you might have some sort of like generalization, like men are more violent than women. And that's sort of like a pretty broad category. You're like saying, okay, men as like this abstract category of people are more violent than women. And like, that's a pretty commonly accepted, understood fact, but it's not like something that you could really like say scientifically about, because it's talking about these broader categorizations of men and women, and then more violent, and sort of comparing them against each other. And so that was kind of like a way of thinking about metaphorical truth. There's the other way that Brett Weinstein puts it, of like some belief that is more adaptive to their behavior or something like that.
I think I heard it from his podcast, because I was thinking about it in like evolutionary terms. That's how he tends to frame things. So it's metaphorical truth. Yes. Yeah. I can get. That's an interesting idea for me to, I don't know, I will think about it more.
Yeah. What you had said about like perhaps Buddhism being the secular alternative to religion, I've kind of thought about it, and I do see that there's a lot of people that are sort of more turning towards Buddhism, just like within, like they're wanting to get that sort of set of religious practices. For myself, I don't really think of it as a live option to me, Western mindset. And I think that the Eastern mindset is so foreign to a lot of the ways that we typically consider things. Like they're like, you don't exist as an individual. You're sort of like this, I don't know, space of nothingness that is supposed to act. I'm not really familiar with Buddhist metaphysics, but I think that there's it's sort of like a completely different mindset that you would have to sort of adopt in order to be truly Buddhist. And I think probably a lot of people that are Buddhist now are sort of the corporatized Buddhism that is just sort of like, okay, you're this sort of cog in this capitalistic machine, but because you build up all the stress, you go home and then you can relax, sort of empty yourself for an hour, and now you're no longer stressed, and now you can keep on being this cog in this machine. And like that to me isn't very interesting. There might be other versions of Buddhism that would be more conducive to a person's psychology or something like that.
I mean, it seems to be. I mean, when I think of like religion, I don't even know where it stands so far as like I'm pretty sure it qualifies as like a religion, right? I'm not like some Buddhism expert. It's just like the one religion where I've thought like that it seems to, I don't know, it seems to have kind of stayed out of the fray of like, oh, there haven't been as many like, or at least as far as I know, there haven't been as many like, wars and stuff around Buddhism. I could be totally wrong about that, but I don't know. It always seems like a little more like they had some kind of like insight into human nature and things we need to do to like be well. I'm curious, what is your like political affiliation? Like, are you affiliated? Are you an enlightened centrist?
I try not to care too much about politics, just because like
so you're an enlightened centrist.
Well, that's something like if you care too much about politics because you have no control over it, it's just going to kind of like make you upset and mad all the time. So that's why I try not to think about it. But probably I have a more conservative temperament. That's kind of like how I normally think about politics, is like, what is the type of temperament that people have? Because I think a lot of these things aren't really up to people's control. And so you just have to like try to communicate to them using whatever means that you can, because a lot of people are just so ingrained in their own sort of value sets. I don't know if you've read Johnathon Haidt's book, The Righteous Mind, but he goes into the like value temperament, or the temperamental differences between like conservative and libertarian and progressive people. That's quite fascinating, especially just to get you sort of a guidebook in order to understand how the other sides think and like what they care about. And I think that's something that's like everybody should read. It's a really, really excellent book.
Yeah, someone recommended that to me recently. I had to cancel my Audible because I was just like, I can't fucking afford this right now. But I read some articles by him, and I used to be much more like in my political history, as I've gone from like being like in my early teens, like super edgy, like I was like, what would have probably been considered like alt-right for a period of time. And then I went to being like a libertarian, like everyone does. And then I went to like for most of my adult life, I've been pretty far left. Like I never had to worry about like being towards the right of anyone. I've always been the most far left until like I got more into my late 20s and I started being a little more nuanced. So I find myself being a little more like concerned for how the left is currently operating, especially on the internet. Because the left is based around constant progress, which is like a great thing, but we're progressing at the speed of light, so it's literally impossible for anyone to be adapting to this constant thing. And then with the like kind of puritanical aspect of it, it's not working. But yeah, from what I've seen of him, he seems like pretty interesting. But so you say you lean conservative, but you seem so reasonable. What do you think of the like modern conservative party as it exists today? I'm just curious. Also, I know we're not talking about like it's Simps anymore, but it seems like we kind of agree for the most part. So sorry if anyone was expecting a bloody, showdown about simptitude, but you'll have to find me someone crazier, because I think we agree on the basic tenets of it. So
I think a lot of modern conservatives right now are just basically progressives 10 years ago. Like they're not really holding to any sort of like core ideals or foundations or traditions or anything like that. It's just sort of like what is it? It's progressivism driving the speed limit or something like that. I've heard somebody refer to it as. So yeah, I'm not really, I don't have much hope in the Conservative Party of America or anything like that. So I'm only concerned with what is under my own control and what can I sort of affect around me. And then that's the best I can sort of do. And like, I don't have much faith in politics at all.
Yeah. So you're more just like somebody who's interested like in like pondering like philosophy and like things from like that aspect, rather than like being super into like the political like sphere of things. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably a smart
I guess
way
it's
to
kind
be.
of odd for me to I guess it's kind of odd for me to sort of argue for this topic, because usually I'm not that involved with like advocating what other people do or anything like that. So like the me saying that people should stigmatize simp behavior is sort of out of character, I guess, for me. But I think it's something that is more open to people's control, just by the fact that like for people that don't want to be derided for behaving toxically simping, then that's something that by calling them out on that could possibly affect their behavior for the betterment of themselves, hopefully.
Yeah, I guess it's like when you talk about stigmatizing, it's like, you know, to stigmatize something always sounds kind of like bad, or at least like for me, because I'm progressive.
Right.
So we're always, everything is like, we need to destigmatize
Everything's
this. We
acceptable,
need to, you know, destigmatize that. Like,
I think there's some behaviors that are worthy of stigmatization. Like not every behavior is good for the flourishing of human society and for human dignity or human value. There's a lot of things that can degrade a person's value in their own mindset or from other people's mindset. And those are the types of behaviors that I think should be stigmatized. People, I don't think really should be stigmatized because that's just harmful for the people themselves. But the behaviors, the things that they can actually change through their actions, those are the things that should be stigmatized. But if it's something that's out of their own control, then what I guess should be stigmatized is whatever system that allows them to fall into that sort of pattern of behavior. Like I wouldn't say like heroin addicts should be stigmatized for being addicted to heroin. I think that the drug dealers should probably be stigmatized, or whatever system of law in that area should be stigmatized for allowing that type of behavior to take place. And you always got to consider, like, what is the main factor that caused this negative event to take place, and that's the location of where you should sort of point your attention at. And a lot of times people are just pointing their attention at whatever that seems most prevalent at any point in time, so it's just useless.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when people are like concerned about it is like, you know, people will just like point at an addict and just be like, shame on you, individual, for making this choice, and then ignore the factors that create that choice, which are the, you know, the things that are, you know, would make more sense to shame. What other behaviors would you consider, like with sex work? Do you think it should be stigmatized as a whole, or do you think it can have like a place in like a healthy society? I'm just curious. Not to be on the spot, but I'm
going to take a pretty non-conservative position, I think, in saying that I think sex work should be moved away from the digital and back into the physical, because those are the areas in which at least a closer version of human contact and interaction is actually taking place, where you're actually having to behave with another person in a sort of like mutualistic form. Because I think that's like what sex is about, is sort of the bringing about of two people together in this really wonderful relationship that can take place. But when that's done through this sort of like weird mechanistic medium of like, I'm jerking off and you're taking your clothes off, this is like such a weird sort of bastardization of what the human body is meant to be doing, like what it's been designed for through evolution, and what it's like used to. Like you were saying, that the internet is just maladaptive to, or we're maladaptive towards the fact that we have the internet. And so I think it would probably be better if there were, I guess, legalization of prostitution in some sense. Just because I think for a lot of young men, they're just not having actual sex. A lot of them are just like actually forming some sort of relationship with a real woman is not worth the effort. Like there's too many concerns about Me Too, or just the fact of like, it's a lot of work to have to sort of get to know someone on a deeper level, when it's just so much easier. Like, oh, I have this horniness within me. I have to go do something in order to get rid of that horniness, and then I'll just turn towards masturbation and pornography. And that I think is just a wrong turn to be making. And I think that like if there was a way in which to further incentivize actual prostitution work taking place in a safe way, however that might be, maybe through licenses or whatever it is that could take place for that, rather than the actual pornography that's taking place. Because I think that's something much further away from the way that our biology is sort of tuned towards. I don't know.
Interesting. Well, that's I've never heard someone be like, "Oh, the online porn," but let's just bring it back to the prostitution. I mean, I'm, you know, shockingly, I am pro legalizing prostitution. That's my general consensus. Just from like every way you look at it, seems to be like a smart thing to do. You know, even if you're just looking at it from a harm reduction angle. But I would disagree with you. I mean, you know, I'm not a man, so I can't understand what that's like. But I am someone who gravitates towards isolating myself, and I feel like people being reliant on like porn and stuff, that's more of just like a symptom of like the isolation that's happening due to like automation and things like that in general. I feel like at least in my own life, I haven't met any guys who like were struggling to date because they were like, all right, I've got my porn, you know, so that's like taking away that desire. I mean, maybe I just haven't. Do you think that's like how the issue is like functioning? Is it's like
there was
like, do you think
some headline I'd seen recently that like the rate of men having sex within like the past 5 years is at an all-time low. I would assume that it's correlated with the ease and accessibility of pornography. There could be some other causal factors to that as well, but that's at least something. Let me see. I've seen the headline come up a couple times. I don't normally read articles just because it's not that interesting to me, but that's at least one of the things that I saw. And just to point out that I think there is a bit of like conservative justification, I guess, for the legalization of prostitution, just because Thomas Aquinas, the ancient Catholic philosopher, he was actually thought that all rights for states to tolerate prostitution was there, just because that's a natural human factor that people are going to, like, young men are going to want to have sex, women are going to want to have sex, and if there is no avenue in which they can express that desire, then it could turn either self-destructively inwards or externally destructive outwards through different violent assaults or different things like that. And so wanting to make sure that there is some sort of like avenue in which that desire can be expressed in a way, even where it would not be the ideal way, like through an actual deep relationship between two people in love, but rather through some way in which that can still sort of take place without all the other hazards that you might have otherwise. But just to sort of make the point clear, I am pretty staunchly anti-pornography, but I'm mostly on the user level. Like, that's where I think the most concern should be taking place, to like for young men or young women that are addicted to pornography and want to stop. I think whatever can be done for those people to help them to stop, and so that they're not like relying upon pornography in order to sort of aid them in their natural sexual desires, and wherever they can sort of outlet those same sexual desires elsewhere in a more helpful and healthy way. That's what I would definitely be in favor of.
So in like your ideal world would like, I'm trying to figure out, like, so you generally, like, you don't love porn or the concept of pornography just in general, or is it just like the specific way that it like affects people in a negative way, like when it's misused? Because that's the thing that I always have a hard time seeing where people are at, because they can sometimes conflate, like, I don't like porn because I don't like abuse and I don't like this, but I kind of see them as like being separate.
Well, there's always
not like entirely separate, but you know.
Yeah, there's always been erotic materials, and like sex work is sort of the oldest profession out there. So it's not like that's something that really be gotten rid of within a society, that you can't have a full out prohibition on this type of material. I do think, though, that internet pornography is especially pernicious, just given the fact that it really harbors off of the seeking of novel things, like seeking of novelty that is innately within young men, especially in regards to sex, that like it can sort of be exploitative, I think, of the natural inclination towards sex and a deep connection with somebody in a way that is just not helpful to the young men or young women at all.
Do you think it's harmful, like just like casual sex in general? Do you see that as like being harmful to society or to like individuals in general?
I mean, I would prefer casual sex over being addicted to pornography. Even though, like, I'm not going to explicitly endorse having casual sex. I think that that's something that should be shared between two people in a relationship that is longer lasting than that. Mostly due to the results of casual sex is like. Plus, I think for a lot of people, there is going to be the natural desire to raise children, and so for the people that have sort of grown accustomed to either having some sexual connection between other people besides the parent of their child, or even through some sexual connection between the people they watch on their screen, that's something that is not going to be I think it unnecessarily risks damaging the relationship between the parents, and I think that having parents is something like crucially necessary. Having having stable parents and healthy familial relationship is something crucially necessary for the child's developing psychology.
In what way would you seek to, like, because when you say like should, so I guess your focus is more like you want to like kind of spread your, I don't want to say this in a way that sounds like in what way do you seek to, like, if that's like your moral value, is it, so you think that goes like beyond your personal preference, is something you would like to either like encourage people to do or like discourage people from not doing? Is there like how would you go, because that's the thing, is like when I think it's fine for people to have like their personal preferences, and I see total value in like having a monogamous relationship if that is what makes someone happy, or as long as it's healthy and there's communication and consent, I don't see any issue with it. So I guess it's like when people have like an idea of what kind of relationship they want, it's like fine until I kind of think if you're like projecting it like onto other people. Do you know what I mean?
Right. I mean, I personally think that a lot of people's innate immediate desires are largely not largely harmful. They're very easily misguided and exploited. Like, we have a natural evolved desire to eat sweet things like sugar, just because it's something that's rich in calories. And so if we were to rely upon that sort of innate desire within us, our preference for sweet and sugary things, then we're going to be eating things that aren't healthy to us, just given the fact that we now have an immediate access to these types of things that we wouldn't normally have or had. So I think that there needs to be more concern actually taking place in regards to, just because somebody's acting on their preferences or desires doesn't necessarily mean that they're acting in their closest self-interest. Like, I think there can be things that are within our self-interest that aren't directly tied to our immediate desires that we might have. And so I think that for the people that might have for the people that might be most satisfied actually having some sort of familial relationship or like close relationship, and then having children and raising a family, then there are certain behaviors that would be most closely helpful in the aiding of that satisfaction of that broader long-term desire. And that's something that actually will require effort and work by people. And I think thereby being more meaningful to them as well. So I think that taking that into consideration, the people that might have these types of desires to have like a child in the future or something like that, I think that maybe they ought to sort of take precautionary measures regarding like who they had sex with and like what they're willing to go through, because it could affect their future longer term behavior that could go against their more long-term interests, I guess. I don't know how much I'm making sense there, but
no, I understand, because I can like see I could see your point. The thing that I just have a hard time understanding is like, what way would this because it's like, of course, everyone kind of wants, like, has their idea of like an ideal society, but it becomes an issue when you're it becomes an issue of maybe accidentally like creating like a stigma on people who don't meet up to like your standard if you're trying to like promote something, even if that's not like your intent. You know, like when people are like, say, like anti-porn activists or something, their intent is probably not like to make the lives of porn stars shittier. You know, they just see it as like, this is not a good thing and we would like to reduce this, but inadvertently they are like contributing to the stigma by creating this kind of sense of immorality about you know, what they're doing. And like for me personally, I don't see anything immoral about like any two adults like having like a consenting, you know, sex act, you know, whether it's filmed or paid, as long as it's fully consensual. If that makes sense. I don't know if I made like a coherent point or it's like something.
Yeah, it could be. And the concerns I would have were some of the things you brought up regarding Pornhub, that like if it is filmed and it's accessible to young children, then well, that's sort of an sexual assault that's taken place in a sort of strange sense. Like if it was like two people consentingly having sex in a room that there was like a 5-year-old or an 8-year-old in that same room, that's obviously sort of a gross abuse of that child. Just because that's something like not to be, that's something to sort of protect the child from. And so if that same sort of act is taking place and then it's just posted online for that same child to accidentally come across, then yeah, there's obviously some sort of problem that happened there. But what you had said about the between two consenting adults, I don't want to say exactly what is in the highest self-interest of, say, the porn stars and sex workers out there. I have some, I guess, skepticism that these are all that this would always be in their closest self-interest. I mean, sure, I can understand how monetarily it would be in their self-interest, but I think there are quite a few cases of people that just have not had good interactions with the porn industry and have deeply regretted what they did when they were younger in this sort of situation that they thought this was their best way in which they could use their body, and have gone up against like or have started like publicly going up against it. Like somebody famous, Mia Khalifa, she recently has kind of like had some serious problems with the porn industry that she was interacting with, and had many deep regrets from doing so. And so that's something I worry, I guess, about, is like how much of being a porn star is actually in the interests of those people, as well as like the problems, like what are the externalities of them being porn stars towards other people as well.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, I'm definitely pro destigmatizing sex work, and a big part of that is because the way the industry operates now, there's a shitload of exploitation, and I feel like that kind of thrives because it's kind of pushed to the outskirts of society. And you know, if a woman's doing that, she already feels like she's doing something wrong, so then she's in a darker environment where she feels like wrong things can be done to her, you know, and it creates this kind of like I don't know how to exactly explain the dynamic.
But I definitely get it. Like what lurks in the shadows is more dangerous to the people that have to retreat to the shadows. Something, I don't know. Yeah,
because it's not regulated in the same way like other industries are, because it's always kind of viewed as like illegitimate. So like someone like Mia Khalifa, who I have like a couple issues with her, even though I think she has some very valid like concerns about the industry, and I do believe that she was like, it definitely happens in the sex industry. It's only very recently that like sex workers have been empowered. That's part of the reason why I'm like talk about sites like OnlyFans, because it's really changed that dynamic. So if Mia Khalifa came up during this era, she could have made an OnlyFans and had complete control over her content and not had someone being like, hey, you should wear this hijab and do it like this. You know, that's a good choice you won't regret, you know, when it got a hit on her from ISIS. Like, so that's why I think it's an example of how, you know, if she had been able to do online sex work, she would have been more empowered than being in the like shadowy like porn industry. But I feel like we're generally progressing like kind of away from that. And on a side note with Mia Khalifa, she I have a couple issues with her because I feel like she kind of threw the whole industry under the bus, because there's kind of like I don't know, like she acts like the porn time is so bad, but she still uses like her porn name for years after she did porn. She did, webcam modeling, which, as someone who's done that, it's not that different. Like it's still kind of in the thing. I don't know. That's kind of like off topic, but the exploitation like absolutely happens in the industry, and that's why I think we should destigmatize it. So I feel like I kind of want to move in the opposite direction to get away from that,
Right. And like for me, I try to think of like, okay, which is easier, to change the culture or to change my response within that culture? And so like, if my sort of like ultimate goal is to like destigmatize porn usage globally, or even just within the United States or something like that, that seems to me a much harder feat to go through than just like maybe trying to incentivize young women into going down other avenues of making money. And so that would be sort of, I don't know, I guess my hopes or values that I'd be trying to work towards, I guess.
Yeah, and that's something I could like. That's like a means of going about things that I could like get behind. Is it's like, even if we have different ideas of like, we kind of have a similar result we want, which is for women to like be thriving. So if you're like creating incentives and like encouraging women, like rather than throwing porn under the bus, if you could just be like create more programs for women to be like, look, you should be like a scientist instead or something. Like, I think that's good, because I definitely don't want to live in a world where we encourage women to, or like overly encourage them, be like, you should do something that's based on your appearance, or be a model or an influencer, or even in the adult industry. It's like, if you do those things, I don't see it as wrong, but it's just not the most stable or fulfilling career choice for most people, but yeah,
right.
I don't know, it's complicated.
Yeah. And that's something I always try to think about, is like, what will be most stable and fulfilling for people. Firstly, myself, like what sorts of jobs and things can I be doing that will make me most happy in a more satisfying way. And if it's the case that there's a good percentage, I don't know the exact percentage, it could be even maybe a minority of women that, after having lived in sort of this porn lifestyle, have sort of deeply regretted it and just thought that like there's better ways in which they could have used their body besides doing the online porn, online sex work, that, well, maybe this is an indication that this field is not something that would be most satisfying and fulfilling for young women to enter into. Because that's the thing, like, we enter into these jobs and doing things without knowing what the longer term results are going to be. And so for the people that have already gone through that pathway and know sort of the end results, they're someone that we can look to as sort of a sage, or somebody that can sort of give us information on this that I would think we would be looking to. But maybe I'm just like going towards like whatever biases my biases already kind of put me towards, and just thinking like, oh, people don't like being pornographers, and so that's why people shouldn't be pornographers. It could be the case that for a lot of people, it's a very fulfilling job. I wouldn't know.
I mean, for me, I view it as in the same way as like a lot of industries, where it's, it can be empowering for some, it can be very disempowering for some, it can be just a job for many, and it could be like some combination of the three for like a whole bunch of people. Because people like to frame it as like either like you think sex work is the most empowering thing in the world, or you think it's like absolute exploitation, when it's definitely a lot more all over the map, like when it comes to that. Like I would say like now more than ever, you have more sex workers who are probably more fulfilled in the industry, just given the control that they have that they didn't used to have when, say, like if you're working under a pimp, or like if you were working under a traditional like porn studio, like now, like, I know a lot of people in the industry who do like really, like, people don't think of it as being like a creative industry, but it's not just like, oh, boom, like, here I'm naked, ta-da. Like, there's whole like super specific like fetishes and acting out scenarios, and like, I can't think of anything that'd be appropriate to censoring right now. It's just like stuff where there's like creativity. It's like, it's almost like its own form of acting. And for some of the women who are doing it, they've found, you know, a different side of themselves. Like, most people I know in the industry, they tend to be like female like dominatrixes, you know, like, people don't generally think of that when they think about sex work, but that's hugely popular, and it's helped them kind of found, it's almost like this kind of like safe place to like practice out a part of your identity that you wouldn't normally be able to act out. And the same goes for like the male who's participating in that, is it's kind of like a place where you can like experiment with something you might not be comfortable telling your partner about, or like exploring with them. Like, I know a lot of people in the industry too, who like, the guys go to them almost like for advice about things they're too embarrassed to ask anyone else, you know, but this random model on the internet. So I think there's some utility there that like gets overlooked sometimes during the like conversation. I don't know.
I had this thought. I don't know if there's already something to it or not, but is there some sort of like, I guess probably not, considering prostitution is primarily illegal, of actual like some digital rendition of some sort of like hooking up between Johns and like in sort of the way that you were saying, that like giving full access to the actual sex workers themselves, rather than having some sort of like exploitative relationship between the pimp and the I don't know, I guess the prostitute or the sex worker. Is there a way that like you could have like an Uber, I guess, for prostitution that could take place, where it's peer-to-peer directly, but it's done in possibly a safe manner, where you can have sort of like information regarding this person, so that if there's any sort of some behavior that takes place during the transaction that is uncalled for, that would rank poorly on their credit score, or not credit score, but their credit score. Yeah, their profile, I guess. I don't know. I guess it's probably a bad, or not a bad idea, but just an infeasible idea, given the fact of prostitution still primarily being illegal.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I so like an Uber, but like for, I don't think I followed that part.
Yeah. So
an Uber for Uber like, for so like, or maybe more like a Tinder.
yeah.
Maybe Tinder, or
usually.
Yeah, but like paid.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess there is sort of elements of that. I don't know how much. There probably is some sort of like digital aspect where you can hire somebody to be your date or something like that. I think that's something that's out there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's like, I mean, online they have, it's called like the girlfriend experience, where, you know, you're paid to just kind of be like an emotional comfort to the person. Like, a lot of this stuff, it does seem like kind of strange and like dystopian, you know, and you see it like even more of the like, it's interesting too how we're moving away from like hardcore pornography. We're actually in a lot of ways moving away from that to people wanting to like have a more emotional connection to the model, and want to know their personality. That's why you're having models thrive on like OnlyFans, where it's not just like you know, like as mechanical. It's like people are definitely yearning for like an emotional connection, and that's why I don't know if it's in like Japan, things like that are a lot like they're definitely like having a moment, like as people are becoming more isolated. So it's, but I view that as more of like, I view it as like symptomatic of like isolation that's happening due to like other factors, and this is just kind of like a way of like coping that people have found that maybe isn't like perfect, you know.
And I see that same for like pornography. I'm sure a lot of people are using pornography due to like some sort of like sexual frustration that they might have, like maybe or I don't know, just to relieve pent up stress or something like that, or just because they enjoy it and it gives them that dopamine release. A lot of these things are different copes in a sort of way, and I would want to steer people towards whatever copes that are least harmful to them. And so, like, if there's certain coping mechanisms that are actually able to build closer to an actual physical relationship with another person rather than just a screen where you're I don't know, there's no actual like tactile feedback that can take place. That's what I would want to move an ideal society closer towards, I guess, rather than sort of mechanistic, very sterile sort of understanding of most online pornography.
Yeah. Well, this is all, this is also hypothetical because I actually don't think that we're going to make it that far into the future. I really, as of right now, I just don't see us. Like, have you ever heard there's like a computer, it's called the World One computer that like predicted, it's like a computer in like Australia that it was like one of the first like huge giant computers from like the 70s, and they factored in like all different data inputs and used it to predict like how the future would go and like what based on like past human civilization. And so far it's been like eerily accurate, and it said that around 2020 a bunch of like shit's gonna pop off, and then by 2040 civilization as we know it will no longer exist.
Wow. Okay.
And not like civilization will be gone, but it will be unrecognizable, which seems so plausible to me right now. Like, I don't know, it's interesting. Like, it's depressing, but
I see there's sort of multiple ways in which society could go. Probably for Western society, it will either move more in this technical advancement to the point that human beings are sort of unrecognizable from who we were 50 years ago. Like 50 years from now, or probably more like 100 years from now, the people that we are then will just be unrecognizable to who we are now or 100 years back. There's the other way in which it could go, and where there's some sort of like revolt against technology, or sort of a return to Ludditism that could take place if, say, Western civilizations are self-destructive, that sort of flourishes in its stead. That I could also see this happening. That so there could be like some sort of Catholic monarchy or some like rise of Islam that could take place, where we'll all be part of that. I don't know. It's probably too far. It's probably not going to happen as soon as we might think it will. But I do agree that there is sort of this tension, I guess, that the future is highly uncertain, especially right now.
Yeah, so you think we have a future?
Fascinating time to be in, I guess.
You think there is a future, though? Because I don't know. Recently, it's just like, I've always thought people like who talked about like the end times were just like, a little hysterical. But recently, it's just like the more I think about it, we are kind of, at least to me, it seems like we're at that point of civilization, and just seeing how like the younger generation is adapting. And then, with our nuclear arsenals and the environmental issue, it just seems like I don't see us pulling out of this one, especially seeing how we've responded to like a pandemic, just the absolute just incompetence of like Americans in our response to this. That's what makes me think that like I don't think we're gonna make it. I don't know, unless ideally I think it would probably be beneficial if people were just like, fuck technology, let's just like go live off the grid. That's probably the smart thing to do, but
yeah, that's the thing. Like, even if like technology sort of takes over, the Luddite systems that are still in place right now, like the Amish, they won't notice anything happening, changing. Or people
they know what's up.
Like, I don't know. I guess I'd be more curious, like what sorts of elements that you think are the causal factors towards the extermination of. I don't know what you fully mean by the end of our civilization.
I mean, I don't even know what I mean by it. I just I feel like our civilization as it exists right now is extremely precarious. We have like massive distrust in the government. Nobody has any faith in like our democracy. And I'm speaking like more so about like America, but you could compare other like Western nations having like very similar issues. That the complete level of corruption and corporate greed, which seems to dictate all huge civilizational decisions that impact all of us, are made by people who are definitely like sociopaths. That's the way our economy works, is that it's sociopaths tend to thrive and get like the tippy top to make choices about what happens to the rest of civilization. So that, and then our precarious situation with like nuclear weapons. We're so easily just start a nuclear war. We have fucking like North Korea, we have Russia, China, we have all these, you know, especially with our president now, who's not like great at diplomacy. It is completely feasible that we could like get into some kind of insane nuclear war. Like, there's a lot of different elements.
That's true. And like every time you stack another one on top, that just makes it incrementally more potentially like risky, I guess.
Yeah, it's just like there's just so many different things that are so precarious, it seems. That's what concerns me.
Yeah. Like I kind of said before, is like I tend to try to focus wherever I can on the things that most directly affect me, that are most directly under my control. And that's sort of something that would be so far outside of my control that I wouldn't even try. I would try to not think too much about it. Sure, it's fun to sort of like think about. Like I love science fiction and dystopian science fiction. I'm actually rooting for the Mad Max Fury Road sort of future, where like all of civilization crumbles and we're left with these cool cars and flamethrower guitars, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's not a bad option. You know, I can get down with that. But yeah, I agree. I think one thing when I think about like civilizational collapse, this is one thing why I've been talking to people of like more opposing views online, is I feel like that's perhaps something people could do to maybe strengthen the fabric of our society, is to like reduce the level of tribalism and kind of come together to find some shared reality, because the lack of shared reality, I think, is like what's just completely just had everything gone off the rails with like political partisanship and stuff. So that's like a little way to, you know, think about something. You know, I don't know. Like that's what I would focus on.
There's so much of our society. There's so much of our society that is built upon some sort of social trust to take place. Then the rest of society just sort of like mechanizes and then isn't able to sort of fix itself. Things that can be done in order to foster communication between people in a sort of trusting manner, and be able to foster communication even across like hard political divergent worldviews. That is something we all ought to be like thinking about. And that's why I recommend again Johnathon Haidt's book, The Righteous Mind, because that is all about it. Yeah, he was somebody that was very much inside the progressive bubble, and then he wanted to write a book that would help teach basically progressives how to win over conservatives to their side. And in his research, he sort of found these common, I guess, value structures that conservatives will lean upon. Like conservatives care about authority, sanctity, and I feel bad that it's not coming to mind.
I think I watched like an interview with him, so I think this sounds like familiar. Just like trying to understand. It's like the different values, but that you can like, if you're able to communicate in a way that like speaks to their values, that you'll have like a more productive conversation. I want to check that out, because that's interesting to me as someone who like has been like, I'm still like, I am at SJW, I'm pretty far left, but compared to like how I was during most of my 20s, was just like, you know, I was in like this like anarchist like collective, you know. I thought that, well, I don't want to say anything that could get me in trouble, but like I had some pretty like radical ideas that are, you know, now I'm more interested in like I don't view people on the other side of the aisle as being like evil evil monsters, you know, because I can understand how they come to like different conclusions. But I feel like a lot of people like, especially online, which is where a lot of political discourse is happening, you know, and I notice it more now more than ever because I've been spending extra time online in quarantine. So design is shockingly horrible. Like, it blows my mind how everything is just goes from like 0 to 1 million so quickly. Oh shit, did I disconnect? Uh-oh.
I wasn't sure if it was me or you, but it glitched for a second.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, I was just saying it's like blows my mind how just like the state of political discourse on the internet really is like shocking. If you take a step back and just look at it, like everyone is just like, you disagree with me, like you deserve to like get raped in your fucking face with like a knife, and there's just it is so strange. It's so strange. Just like, I don't know.
I wonder if I should actually like change my priorities, and maybe it's the case that political discourse on Facebook and Twitter is actually a larger concern than online pornography, because that's probably something that is more destructive to a society than just the fact that people are jerking off every night or something like that. I don't know. Maybe I'll have to rescale my priorities.
I think that, I would say that the state of like online discourse is probably I would say definitely more harmful than like pornography, you know. Yes, it is. It's just so, I don't know. I don't know. I'm always, it just really blows my mind. I'm still new to like talking to people on, like, I've always like wasted, you know, years of my life arguing with people online, but like once I started like streaming and stuff on, like, even just occasionally, it was just like, whoa, I don't know, just seeing it like up and close personal is so strange. Like I'm just not used to it. Like,
there's this video from CGP Craig, probably I guess from like a year or so ago, that called "This Video Will Make You Angry," and it's all about how things that we find online that actually like rub our fur the wrong way are the things that are more likely to be shared, but shared in an aggressive manner. And so it's just like we're building up this sort of system of making ourselves angrier and angrier just by interacting online, and that's the stuff that is propagated to the top. And it's just like, oh my gosh, what is the internet? If this is kind of like the way things sort of enter into our social consciousness, is the fact that they make us angry, then like how in the world is the internet sort of supposed to be this good thing? I mean, sure, there's plenty of benefits to the internet, but you got to think about it. What are the costs of it as well?
Yeah, no, that's exactly one of the gigantic ways that we are not adapting well, is just
and what
the way that the algorithm works. It's like it's completely ruled, you know, because we have the like attention economy where it's like people click stuff that enrages them, you know. It's just a constant input of rage, and I think that's why you see the state of discourse being so abysmal, is because it's just like when I read the news, it's just constant, you know, like whatever they can think that'll be like the most triggering to the most amount of people, like this horrible thing happens, like, or and then the other side will be like, look at all these people who are triggered by this horrible thing that's not actually horrible. It's that's another reason why I think we're expedited towards civilizational collapse, is a lot of in part due to the algorithm that's created like our own separate little universes where we're constantly like outraged. It's I don't see a future.
I guess I don't really see any sort of prescriptions that could be taken against that either, other than like take a breather from like arguing on the internet for a month or so if you can. And I know that's kind of a large cost, but even like if you can do it for a week or so, that's something that you can at least use in order to sort of recalibrate yourself and what actually matters. And I do see people like doing that on Twitter. A lot of people I follow will sometimes like go through and I did it for like half a week before I was like, I got to get back on here and argue with people. But I think that's like probably the only thing that really can be done on an individualistic basis for those types of problems.
Yeah, it's all, I don't know. I could literally talk about how fucked up, I feel like I'm just like a walking Black Mirror episode. I'm just constantly like,
Yeah.
I definitely have that vibe, but I can't, like, I mean, I also love the internet. It's a very love-hate thing. Like, there's a lot of really great, cool aspects to it, but I really just, I don't know. Maybe because I spend so much time on like the dark corner of the internet, you know, it seems like maybe more abysmal to me than it is, but I don't know. It's pretty bad. But anyway, I should probably get
I gotta get going too.
But yeah, thanks for coming on, and I'm glad we got to debate simps for 5 minutes and talk about the internet. But yeah, no, I'd love to like talk to you again about any other.
It was a good conversation.
Yeah, feel free to come on anytime.
Okay.
If there's anything you want to talk to SJW degenerate about, I'm always open book. All right.
Okay, cool.
All right.
Yeah. All right.
All right. I will catch you later, and farewell, chat. I'm sorry I didn't look at chat like the whole time. All right. I'll see you later.
All right.